I think entrepreneurs underestimate how nuanced and refined an understanding they actually need to have of the role before they hire it in the first place because they listen to sound bites and they hear things like delegate everything and just be a visionary. That sounds really good. It's not reality.
Like, what I would say is you gotta touch the tools. Know how to use the tools that are in the field, all right? You gotta touch Canva. You gotta touch Facebook ads. You gotta touch the spreadsheet to track your leads. You gotta touch the CRM to look at the stages of the pipeline. You gotta touch the follow-up, next follow-up. You know, you have to update the deals. You have to set the targets. And I think that you gotta touch the tools. Like, you gotta know what you're doing.
You're watching the LeanScaper podcast, where landscapers come to grow. If you want the systems, stories, and strategies to build a lean, mission-driven company that your team loves working for, keep watching. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the LeanScaper podcast. This is your host, Benji. I'm really excited today. I'm joined by Ryan Groth. He's the founder and CEO of Sales Transformation Group. You might hear me call it STG for short throughout this conversation. They are a leading sales coaching and training platform for contractors and trades professionals. I've known him for the last 8 or 9 years. Since they've built STG, Ryan and his team have helped over 1,000 businesses, transforming their sales teams, their systems, their cultures, and overarchingly just enabling them to achieve consistent, reliable, predictable revenue growth and operational efficiency. The reason I invited him on is because when it comes to helping contractors build high-performance sales teams, he's the GOAT. So, Ryan, welcome. Thank you for coming and doing this. It's really good to see you, man.
Dude, thanks for having me on, Benji. Stoked to be with you, man.
So I think I'm always interested to ask people with a very broad aggregate perspective on a certain subject matter, these big kind of like trend questions. And you have this really unique vantage point where you get to peer inside of the sales orgs of hundreds, if not thousands, of contracting companies in a whole slew of different industries. And I wonder if you can answer this question. In the world of contractor sales, where are we right now, and how did we get here?
Yeah, so where we are today is, I mean, for years, decades, the contractor picks up the phone, calls back when it's convenient for him or her, and they go out there and they have no sales process. They show up, they just write a quote. There's no salesmanship, no sales process, no sales skill really like needed. It's just the natural uh just the natural person and just who they are, the relationship building skills, the knowledge that they have. And they would
They're
just
relying
quote.
on the demand. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I want to say this. They're kind of over relying on the demand forces of the market and totally getting away with it.
Right, they're aggressively waiting for their phone to ring. That's their business strategy. They're reactive, basically. They're reactive. And they're just saying, "Hey, people need me, you need and I'd help. I've served this for you and you should buy from me and here's why." And they think product knowledge in and of itself and time in business in and of itself will win business and then they email quotes and they rarely follow up because they're like, "Man, if they want this, they'll call me." And it's just like that mindset at the owner level then is allowed at the sales rep higher level. And then the hired sales rep lives in this state of, average and reactive state as well. And that's what I'm seeing and what's things are changing. Like that is not acceptable anymore. The high performers who figured out sales process, figured out leadership, figured out sales skill, they have like scorched ahead of everyone and they've crushed everyone. But now that is becoming normalized and expected in the businesses in contracting today, like what they have done, the fundamentals of making a sale, basically.
You frame it in such a way that it sounds like people were more or less sitting on their ass for a decade, which to be honest, I don't think is wildly untrue. And that has now changed. That's no longer the case. But when you explain it in such a cartoony way, it's like, well, how did this industry get away with that for 10 years? Do you have takes? I know I certainly do. What is your sense for the macroeconomic factors, the economy that we lived in, the way buyers bought? Like, how can you explain what was essentially a 10-year fat and happy period?
Yeah, I would say, the competitive landscape of the markets they're in. So, what's happened is 10, 15 years ago, there wasn't, like, a lot of best practice sharing. Now it's very normalized. There's access to that. And then, typically, the more, higher performing contractors are in and more buttoned up businesses are in a metropolitan that's more competitive. So you'll have more of that, and then because of access, visibility, sharing of best practices, inspiring others because of results, that's starting to get out, and then, that information and that access to technology, yes, I think buyers has a lot to do with it. Millennials and younger are just expecting you to be quick and instant gratification type of, world we're living in. But what I would really say is, like, access to information, access to what's possible, right? 4-minute miles, those types of things, they're now been broken more often because somebody finally did it. When somebody's hitting higher revenue numbers and starting to see higher performance, it's giving permission for everyone else who believes that they can do it, that they can do it too. And I just think that that's starting to become more normal, where people are like, dude, I'm in Podunk, Illinois. I'm in the middle of the state. I'm such, people think Chicago is the whole state. It's like there's a big state. It's like they could become high performing and do really, really well. But what happens is, as more people are getting more coaching, more access to more technology, and getting inspired by people who are willing to share, um, it's triggering something in these people that are saying, I want more, versus I'm doing good in my own little world. And my one guy, my other guy that I compete with, they're not doing that much, and they're okay. They're just there's a standard and a bar that I think is inspiring people. On the heels of that, you have now, of course, more private equity, and they're running it like a true business. They're measuring everything, and they value marketing and sales operations, and they know that's going to make a big impact and set them apart.
So that's a really interesting question, or an answer rather, that I wasn't fully expecting. And I hear and see everything that you're talking about. I thought maybe you'd comment more on like z- zero interest rate policy era is over, and so therefore it creates a slightly more stifled economic situation. We went through COVID, which for a year and a half, 2 years was a big boom time based on free money and no travel, which is, in hindsight, it seems like a very obvious equation. People renovate, they build pools. And so a lot of people enjoyed that. And then now there's like a pretty hardcore hangover that I think the market is experiencing, particularly in home services. We work with landscapers, our audience is landscapers, and this is a conversation I hear at our events. I see online a lot. It's just like, wow, this is a lot harder to sell jobs than it was a few years ago. And I think everything that I just said is true, but I hadn't actually considered the angle that you're talking about, which is like the bar is just higher. The competition's just stiffer and people's lunch is being eaten, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can't get away with, like, not delivering a proposal on time, and, like, you can't get away with pipeline, just leads that haven't been contacted but once, and they didn't get in touch with them. Like, there's real still companies that don't have sales managers all over those leads, from contact all the way to contract. It's still a reality, unfortunately. There's stuff slipping through the cracks like crazy. But being that you're dealing with landscapers specifically, we do hear some of that, but we're also dealing with a lot of other different trades. So we hear some like paving right now, as they're telling me they're crushing it. Like, there's like no hangover, and I'm like, wow, I need to call some more pavers. So anyway, interesting. So.
What is in store, given that kind of setup and the context and the path that led to here, you look at the next 5 years, let's say, I think that's probably as far into the future as anyone can see. And if they tell you they can see longer, they're probably lying. Um, what's your best guess as what's going to happen? How does this space look for sales leaders and salespeople and sales teams over the coming 5 years? And what patterns and trends do you find you are hyper aware of and like speaking about a lot with your audience and with your contractors?
Good question. I would say that over the next 5 years, sales leaders and salespeople will still have great career opportunities. That I would say that, just to kind of, I don't think that the sales is going away, the role of sales, the career of sales. I think that you're gonna find that the transitionary, opportunity in sales is there's gonna be more, like, real careers with companies who are really matured their sales departments over the next 5 years. Where, like, a sales leader is like, "Man, this person has a track record of developing many, many, many success stories," right? Like, I feel like there's not a lot of good sales leaders in our industry. I was talking to the CEO of a really, really good roofing company the other day, and he was just like, "Bro, I'd rather hire 50 admin than try to hire a sales manager." And I'm like, I love that comment because it is a very hard role. Somebody who can drive revenue, someone who knows how to manage pipelines, someone who knows sales process, somebody who knows how to coach, somebody who knows how to build a team, somebody who knows how to manage comp plans, somebody who knows compensation. Like that was just like a part of what I was scratching the surface of their role. So what I would really say is if you have a desire to establish yourself as a sales leader, different from a sales rep in the industry, there's going to be a high demand for that because the average competency of the sales management role in this industry is low, but there's so much upside and so much potential. And so I think that I wanna say, like, the role of sales manager in sales is gonna be, like, more galvanized, like, there's um, more, like, longer term career, people in the career, and then with brands that are gonna stand the test of time, that have a good marketing department, that they know how to run ads and brand, and they have, they're just a well-ran organization with good leadership, good core values. And I think that there's so many companies that are figuring out that, man, if I can create a culture, I have core values, we're good leaders, we are good stewards of our resources, um, we're here to stay, and we're growing a brand and a real organization. Um, I think that the talent will flock to those companies and they'll stay there because finding a really good place to call home is hard, I think, for talented people. But in the next 5 years, I think that there's gonna be more, of those that of the competitive bar, the bar and the competitive landscape. I think there's gonna be more that really solidify, that check a lot of boxes, and it won't be so mom and pop, it won't be so toxic, it won't be so like, "Yeah, that's roofing," or, "Yeah, that's the trades," it's gonna be more professional, um, and I'm excited for it, but I think that those 2 roles, sales manager is the most desired, underdeveloped, undertrained. There's not a lot of them in this industry. There's very, very, very few. And I think that there's a great opportunity for professionalizing that role and people like really earning a great career and a great living and making a great difference going forward.
Pardon the interruption, but if you are a mission driven leader in the landscape industry who is hungry, humble, and smart, and you love this show, you should subscribe to this channel. That way you'll never miss an episode. That sales manager function for most of our listenership would be filled by the owner. It's only a certain, like, you need to be a pretty large business to justify, to have enough salespeople to justify having a sales leader, sales manager, director of sales, whatever, VP of sales. Um and so that function still needs to be filled, and in the case in the businesses of most of our listeners, that's going to be filled by the owner with a few exceptions, a few bigger exceptions. If they're interested in really, like, future proofing their sales org, in terms of people, in terms of systems, in terms of culture, they're looking at a future that is really murky and complex and is really hard to see around the corners. Um, a lot of that is due to the rate of change. A lot of that is due to AI. Some of that is due to private equity, like you mentioned. But they're like, "Hey, I'm a gamer. Like, I'm committed to this mission and this vision that I have. I'm not throwing in the towel just because this is like a weird time in history." For that person, like, what are you're talking to them right now, like, how would you coach them to future proof their sales org?
Hmm. Um, Great question. I would say you start with, I think, taking on the sales manager function and identity a little bit more wholeheartedly, like all in.
Okay.
I'd say start with that. I think that a lot of owners are like, I love systematizing my business and I want someone else to do that. And to your point, they haven't really, the business isn't big enough to justify that. It doesn't make sense to hire somebody to do that yet. So you have two choices. You have a couple choices. You can just step in as the owner and wear that hat, which I think is going to be the best decision for the business. And that would require you to get out of your comfort zone quite a bit because half of them are 65, 70% of them are not in their minds a sales driver. Most of them wouldn't consider themselves that. Or you can spend money to train them up, somebody else up to do that you trust, that's like your brother, somebody that you trust that's talented, that's bought into the mission, and spend the money to train them. Or you hire somebody on the outside, a new employee to do that. All those have costs
I
associated.
don't really like options 2 and 3, I'm gonna be honest. I don't mind, like, sharing my own opinion on this, which is, 1, I think expensive roles are a lot riskier for the
Yeah.
obvious reasons in that they're
The third
expensive.
one's the worst option in my
Third's the
opinion.
worst.
Yeah. Yeah.
2, I don't th one of the mistakes that I have learned the hard way, I'm just thinking back through painful memories, is, like, hiring roles I don't fully understand myself. And I've almost, like, drawn a line in the sand now where, like, I won't build a team of people around me unless I understand the core function really well, how to measure it really well, what good looks like. And whether that's a graphic designer, a media buyer, a salesperson, whatever, a videographer, whatever the case may be, I don't need to be like the best at that role, but I need to have a much I think entrepreneurs underestimate how nuanced and refined an understanding they actually need to have of the role before they hire it in the first place, because they listen to sound bites and they hear things like delegate everything and just be a visionary, which that sounds really good, it's not reality.
It doesn't, but it's not, it's gonna be a couple of years of pain, and it's gonna suck if you do that too fast. Like what I would say is you gotta touch the tools. Like,
Thank you.
you know how to use the tools that are in the field, all right? And you've done it. You had to do it the first year, maybe you still do it. You gotta touch Canva. You gotta touch Facebook ads. You gotta touch the spreadsheet to track your leads. You gotta touch the CRM to look at the stages of the pipeline. You gotta touch the follow-up, next follow-up. You have to update the deals. You have to set the targets. And I think that you gotta touch the tools. Like, you gotta know what you're doing. Because to answer your question more fully, I'm a little bit gone I've gone crazy lately, like, on goals. Like, I'm, like, double downing, triple downing on goals, goals, goals. Like, sales leaders, if they can create goals and set goals for their sales reps, and if they can keep a short term, like, short-sighted thinking and keep them going and engaged, and then they get confidence built up because 'cause they're hitting their goals, then what is forced to occur is they have to do things differently to hit those goals. And if you do that long enough, you have habits that are starting to form. What's really beautiful about a sales leader is they're able to set a bar, a goal, and a habit and a standard that can now become normalized in your business and create high performance. And so, what if you look at it like that in terms of mindset, that how you use the tools, how they go about dealing with the customer, what the sales process is, how they manage time, how they build relationship with the reps. There's so many variables, but if they can get down to optimizing those things for their sales reps to have a great day every day and really have a bar where they don't want a lot of wasted time. They're really dialing in that time. Well, guess what? The sales rep's going to succeed. They're going to have more success and going to make more money. And they're going to be like, man, I'm really developing here. And so then when you take and transform average or talented people with no skills into high performers in your landscaping business or whatever it may be, man, it feels really good. And then they're gonna have their first big quarter, they're gonna make a lot of money, they're gonna take too long a vacation, their pipeline's gonna dry up, and then they're gonna come back, and then they're gonna be like, "Well, I learned a lesson as a sales leader not to," there's gonna be lessons learned, but man, I think, if the owner even if the owner has a hired sales manager, he needs to know or she needs to look at the numbers, look at the goals, hold the sales manager accountable to the goals, and measure I think you should look at goals 2 to 3 times a day. Your CRM should have not just sales goals, but lead targets and proposal volume targets, and you should look at those every day. And if you could do that, man, your your brain will start to think what needs to be done and action to be taken in your business to start to change and get you on track. And then you do that long enough, now you're sustaining high performance. You're saying no to stuff that's distracted you once before. You're saying yes to things that create action and change. And it starts to be fun. Um, so that's what I would say long-term future proof. Embrace the sales hat. Like embrace the leader hat. Be that person that's like, I'm just gonna own this. And then set goals with your team and then individually and look at them all the time. And then just get your whole team obsessed about them. And then guess what happens? They're gonna have personal goals for their health and their family and their children. And all these things will start to carry over and then they're gonna be high performers.
So
And that's a fun thing.
here's what I see happen like most of the time when um when people are building out a sales team for the first time, or like they're just trying to expand like the sales function of their business. They're investing in growth, and they get to this stage where they're like, hey, I need a salesperson. They put together a comp plan that is half baked and, maybe too much base, not enough variable, or maybe it's just not, probably in most cases not enough, not a good enough offer to attract the top 30 percentile of salespeople. And so you end up with some clown and you onboard them. They sell at 50% the efficiency that you did as the owner. And so now your sales are, you're actually paying more for lower sales. And that person quits or you exit them a year later. It's a bit of a setback. Whatever. What I want you to speak about is this question that I find really interesting is like if I'm a landscaper or any kind of contractor and I really want to, my business isn't big enough to build out a sales leader and a 5 rep team. I need to step into that sales leader role. And this theme of like you got to touch the tools. I'll make the list short so this is easy to bang out quickly because I'm putting you on the spot. But like, what are the three most core things that a business owner stepping into the sales leader role and taking it really seriously needs to master, but almost never does?
Yeah, great question. They there's two that jump out right out of the gate. There's gonna be a lot more, but let's just go. I have two right out of the gate. They need to master the CRM. They need to master their numbers.
Say
Like a
more
lot of
about that. What does that mean? And why don't it seems so obvious? And why don't more people do that?
they need to know every lead should be tracked with a status. Every lead should be managed with sales statuses. You should have targets in your CRM and you need to live in it. And so you can expect your sales reps to live in it because even if you have half a brain, right, and you have no sales process, if you use the CRM and follow up more than somebody else, you're going to have better success. That's a variable that has to be there. You got to manage the ROI on every lead generated. You got to track and follow up with every deal. So that one's number one. You have to. And I think a lot of CRMs still fall a little short with like insights and reporting and numbers because the numbers, you need to know them. Like, what are your targets? What is your closing ratio? What's your average deal size? What's your sales cycle? Um, are there follow up notes? Are there comments? Like, those are just some basic things. What's the lead source? What's going on there? That's number one. They need to live in the CRM. That's a term. That's a phrase. Like, live in it every day. Number two, you need a sales process. So like, what is the sales process? The sales process is, yes, like a linear left to right set of steps. I also like to infuse like a sales methodology. What is the fundamental like methodology of the sale? Like, what do you guys believe to be true about sales in general? Well, how do you define it? What do you see sales as? Because if you can have milestones of a sales methodology and then you have a sales process that you guys can document and then you actually master it, you're able to coach from that. And I think a lot of owners get away with no sales process because they're the owner and they're able to make a lot of decisions and influence people to make purchasing decisions and they're knowledgeable. But the sales reps that they're hiring aren't nearly as knowledgeable or have the authority that they have and care about the business quite as much as they do. So they need a sales process because you have to have something repeatable that you can do over and again. And that sales process, we have one that we teach and a methodology we teach that allows and enables sales reps to know how to sell professionally with like high degree of sales competency within the sales process if you execute it. But what happens is a sales leader doesn't master it themselves. So they don't know what to hear. And so they're like not just coaching the major milestones, they need to coach the soft things, the soft skills and the grayer areas and the emotional intelligence and the listening and the active listening. And I think that that's the third part is, like, the coaching, it gets neglected. They're the sales manager, so therefore they're looking at their numbers, they're calculating commissions, and they're helping with proposals, right? Dude, that's like the bare freaking minimum, bro. Like, that's the bare minimum. Where your role is you're transforming these individual people, their identities, and they're speaking into that, and you're coaching up skills and it's life skills, it's sales skills, it's both and. And I think when they embrace that role, accountability becomes easier, setting standards and holding them becomes easier, and then you have more confidence too in your ability to let go of somebody and recruit somebody new in, to get them ramped faster. And I think that that's something that I also see is they keep people around way too long that aren't doing anything massively different to change results, and that's ultimately the sales leader's role or fault, ultimately their fault, so,
That's a
yeah.
that's a great little, like, starter pack. So if someone, like, masters their CRM, they live in it, they call customer support to learn about new features and new tools and new parts of it that they haven't explored before. They're truly, like, educating themselves to become deeply competent in it. They install a sales process and methodology, and they invest in coaching. I feel like success is all but assured. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy, but like, you have achieved directional correctness in terms of investing in your sales infrastructure. And you're right. Like, it sounds pretty simple and easy, but when you examine the businesses like you have, you'll notice that there's gaping holes in all three of those categories. Um, how would you encourage someone? One of the things that I think leaders are confronted with right now is I might call it a bit of entitlement. I might call it a bit of, you taught me this term, drunk on leads. So now they're like hungover on leads. It's like because like they're not drunk anymore and there's not as many leads. It's this tricky. It's the challenge of changing the tempo, changing the energy of a salesperson, the sales mindset of a salesperson. And I think in most cases for our listeners, this is going to come down to the owner doing this. And the situation they find themselves in is, hey, I have this guy that I hired 5 years ago. The first three were great, but I got to be honest, the last two have been not great. And I don't really see a correction happening. How do I basically, to use a visual, take like the spark plugs and like and like zap this guy or this woman or this team into a more functional, higher vibrating, much more active, much more carnivorous mindset versus this kind of asleep at the wheel spot that they've been in for the last little bit.
Yeah. Well, first examine yourself and say, "What happens if nothing changes?" And just play that out for a while. And if you're cool, alright, then you're not gonna change anything, but if you're starting to feel your heart burn a little bit, you're like, "Yeah, this is gonna suck. We're gonna have lower sales and the cash is gonna dwindle, and I gotta let some people go, and then, I gotta" just start to play it out, right? Just to play it out. You don't hit your goals, you can't finish that build of the house, whatever the consequences are. Start with that because I think when you visualize and you think about imagining this world that you're already, like, trying to arrive at in your head, I do think that's powerful, but I do think that pain motivates you too. Like, I gotta get after it. So that said, you become the spark plug by leading from the front. You are the spark plug. You are the one that's going to re-energize the team. And I think that, like, I was just talking to a company on a call. He lives in Arizona. He's got an office in Arizona. And he also has an originating office, an HQ in MSP, um, Minnesota. And so, they just let go of a sales leader who's massively underperforming. They're behind schedule and plan. And I was just like, "Hey, man, I gotta just tell you, you gotta let this guy go. I think you know the answer, and you need to go lead from the front. You gotta tell your wife, who just has a 3-month-old baby, that you'll be back on Friday, and you're gonna go out there, and you're gonna get into the weeds, and you're gonna do ride-alongs, and our coach is gonna come out, and we're gonna reinvigorate the team. We're gonna set the standard, or we're gonna have a daily huddle every day in the morning, and then you're gonna have a report in the evening of all the activities that were done, and everyone's gonna see it. And you're gonna not just look at it, but you're gonna comment on it in front of the whole group if if you see something that's not there, because you're going to set a standard. And so that's what I told an owner of a company who hired us to get help, right? And I just like said, dude, you got to lead from the front. And so you got to be the spark plug and the change, and you got to stay in it. And I think that when people embrace that, it's a very good thing. When they start to be like, they distance themselves too much, they disconnect too much, they're not leading from the front, they're leading from the back. um Man, that you start to see stuff slip. If we can shorten the like reduce the let me say it this way, increase the frequency of conversations around these changes that need to be made, and keep hammering them, you could start to see change. If you talk about it once and then talk about it again in 60 days and then talk about it again in 30 days, you're not gonna see change. You have to you have to get in the game, roll up your sleeves, lead from the front, set it, and then hold it. Hold it there very, very firmly, and, you'll eventually realize some change, so
Um, Leading from the front, leading from the back. This is a really interesting dynamic that I think I've struggled with in my career. I see a lot of people in our community struggle with. I was joking earlier about, people are told to be a visionary and just sort of do whiteboarding sessions and run strategy and hire all these geniuses around them. We get given this, we've been peddled this narrative over the last 20 years. I'm going to personally kind of blame like Gino Wickman a little bit, although I do love Traction and I think EOS has been a great system for a lot of people. I see in the small business environment all too often, I just think the word gets thrown around a little bit too liberally. And the reality is, if unless you're building a massively disruptive, transformational business that is 8 to 9 figures in scale with a huge team, people aren't going to like this, but there actually isn't that much vision needed to run a $5 million contracting business. Like, the playbook exists. Some like, people are gonna, like, be like, that's I'm a visionary." It's like, yes, I'm not saying there's no vision needed, but there's a lot more implementation needed, there's a lot more leading from the front needed, there's a lot more hustle needed. You're not designing the iPhone, you're not designing like, you are installing landscapes, you are installing roofs, you are building homes. Doesn't mean that that work isn't deeply complex, it is. I'm just saying there isn't as much need for the visionary mindset and the leading from the back approach. And I think sometimes people are afraid and wait too long to get out of the boardroom and onto the field and be that spark plug. And I wonder if you've do you feel the same way? Is that just a hot take that I have? Do you see something similar or
dude,
do you
I
feel
mean, I just
differently?
went through it myself. Like,
Tell me about it.
I mean, I think I'm a really good visionary and integrator. Like, whenever I have a vision and I make sure it gets done with my team, like, stuff gets done. Like, I don't I've many times, had vision and asked it to be integrated, and it hasn't been integrated, and I paid an expensive penny for those people. And I think that it's a temptation that sounds really good, but, like, ask yourself, do you really need it? Do you really need it? I remember when I was, like, doing, like, 2.5 million at one time, and I was growing. And, I was talking to an EOS implementer, and he was like, "Dude, you don't need EOS, bro." I'm like, "Huh." 'Cause everyone's talking about, like, and
Right.
I'm like, "Okay." I think there's a place for it, but I think that I was like, I wish I would've, like, listened to that for, like, another 2 years, a little longer,
Yeah.
because, there when you most people are pretty capable of doing those things, especially, a $5 million contracting business. And so, I do think it's a bit of a it's a not, I don't wanna say pipe dream, but it's like
People try to graduate into that zone 5 years too early almost every single
That's a
time.
great way to say it. It's like people wanna rush to that, and they haven't earned the right. They ended up spending more money on overhead, and they're still dissatisfied with the results, and then
Right.
they're not, and it's just it's a frustrating chapter, and
I genuinely think my sample size leads me to believe that to get to that place is a 15-year journey if you're really smart and if there's minimal mistakes along the way. And most people make a ton of mistakes and aren't as smart as they think they are. I'm talking to myself right now. This is not I'm not dissing on anyone, myself included, make more mistakes than they think and aren't as smart as they think they are, and then they expect to get there in 5. And so it's just like I really like when I hear leaders like you come on and just be like, "Yeah, get off your ass and be the spark plug. Go out and sell some deals. Lead from the front, be the example."
do you
I
wanna see your
really
whole company invigorated when you freaking close a fat deal? Like,
Right.
when you haven't been, it's gonna be like, you're gonna be like, "Let's go," and then everyone's gonna be like, "I can do this too," and then, "Yeah, he can do that," and it just changes the dynamic. I just yeah.
What's the success rate on fixing bad sales cultures? You have a lethargic team of order takers, and you need them to be sales carnivores. You need them to be doing outbound. What is the success rate of fixing is there a case to be made to just take it back to the bolts and start from 0? Are you just 3 months of good coaching away from fixing everything? What is g feel free to just give me a new one. I don't think there's a one size fits all
8
answer
out
to
of
this, but what
10, you gotta go down to the bolts and rebuild with new
interesting.
standards. Yeah, it's not gonna be easy to transform every existing team. I mean, I would say, here's what I'm being very raw here. Someone's like, "Man, STG, can you help me?" Yes, we evaluate your team. Everyone sucks. The owner is not trained or engaged with sales. 3 months in, we're like, "This guy or girl, this one's sticking with it. The rest of them aren't." And then, like, we have to make a decision, and then they're like, "Man, I didn't know it was gonna be like this." But what happens, though, is that they have a sales process, they have accountability, they have a plan. They're starting to feel the pain of not having sales reps perform when they know they should, and they know what it's like when sales reps are coachable and they're trained and they get in coaching. And then the sales leader becomes good at coaching. Like, that's the thing a lot of them don't have. They don't know how to they don't know their CRM, and they don't know their numbers. They're not holding people accountable. They don't know how to coach because they haven't seen anything. Like, they haven't seen any professional sales training. So then they start to sit in on calls. They hear other companies like, oh, they get inspired. They listen to the sales process. They read the book. They get the sales methodology in them. They put it into practice because they have no reps they can close. So they go out there and running it. They're seeing it work. And now there's like belief, right? And then we bring people up back into the org, and we start to see it go to like a 2.0 rebirth, and it works. That happens most of the time, unfortunately.
So it's a big project and the success is not promised.
It's
Um
not, but you could have some pretty talented, bought in, loyal, on fire for the mission of the company sales reps who can change. But, um, that requires you to say bye to your best friend and like your brother. Like, that could happen. Like, it's hard. So you have to just decide how long do you want to wait, right? How long do you want to let this go on? And you have to just look at it case by case and see if there's a real change. But what has to occur though is the owner has to realize I have to set a new bar for my company, and it's up to me if I want to tolerate it or not. And the more they get close to seeing how that bar actually looks and what they know they need to do, it's they'll start to make the right decisions. But I'm maybe exaggerating a little bit, but it's not a very high rate of change to take order takers and transform them into hunting cold stone killers that are representing your brand amazingly and generate referrals and know how to generate leads and sell high value and can predict and forecast their pipeline and hit their numbers every single month. Like, that's a big challenge undertaking.
Um, I want to talk to you a little bit about skills that you think are worth investing in, and I'm going to set it up this way. This is a theme that I spoke about the other day with Marcus Sheridan, who you may have heard of, kind of a marketing and sales speaker and writer. We love him, and I'm gonna ask you a similar question, but I'll frame it the same way, but there's actually a slightly different ask. So the setup is this: like, I think that business leaders are feeling, especially in landscaping, are feeling overwhelmed by the rate of change, particularly on the heels of these new technologies, changing markets. And I think a lot of people are like, man, what is a safe bet right now? I could send, you know, I could put my kids in school and before they finish their degree, everything they've learned is completely obsolete and irrelevant. Like, that's true. Like, as a parent, that's true. When you are looking at your business, it's a similar question. It's like, what do I invest in that's a safe bet? What is going to be obsolete? I don't really know. I spoke to a sales trainer 2 years ago who said it's really important that you train all of your sales reps in writing so that they can write better follow-up emails and communicate in the written word. That's no longer good advice because you can just teach someone to prompt GPT and write better emails than they would have. So, I mean, that's my I use that point to sort of like that's the rate of change thing. What do you feel for a sales team are like fundamental? Like, this is not gonna change. AI comes around, ChatGPT 9.2 comes around, like whatever, the whole world changed. This is still a safe bet in terms of skill development for sales teams.
All right, this is great. I love this. Okay. I think that no matter what year we live in, no matter how great the AI is, it will never replace a human being's ability to connect to a spirit, to their soul, and build a relationship quite like a human does. So I do believe that there's going to be a lot of AI, but how I don't know about you, but when you know on the other line is AI, do you like shut
I
down a
don't
little
buy
bit?
from that. I'm
Yeah,
not like I'm not
yeah,
consuming. I use AI every day, but I don't want to be
right.
sold or purchased from it on any level.
One's ability, I think one salesman's ability to really build strong connection, authentic relationship, have integrity, and really have the skill of sales and asking really good questions, using the right tonality, managing one's time, taking care of their health and their energy, so when they show up, they're an energizer bunny, like, they're fully engaged, like, they are when they show up into a room, the light switch just turned on, right? That's the vibe that, like, I see sales reps being, and that's why, like, we have this whole, like, kinda culture around being, like, a sales athlete, like, that means that that person trains, they're prepared, they're a professional, they're a pro, right? They show up, they know the fundamentals, they know their business, they care, and I just think that, um, that'll never be replaceable, a sales rep who can empathize. Like, I was talking to a sales rep who's working for a commercial roofing company, and he showed some interest in, like, working for me, and I might hire him, and he's a little older gentleman, but he's, like, not trying to come in and do all this executive stuff. He's just, like he's got a great story, and bottom line is, I was just sharing with him some challenges that I've gone through, and he had the ability to empathize with me, and I was like, "Man, that is some powerful skills of this guy." He kinda wants to sell me on him, right? His ability to empathize with me, although I felt like maybe he's really skilled, there was enough authenticity in that moment where I was like, "I can open up more to you." Well,
Mm.
that's what good salespeople are able to do, is get you to open up because they've lowered resistance, lowered their guard down, and that's a beautiful thing. A good sales rep actually loves to do that. They love to do that. It warms their heart up because they're caring and engaging in such an intentional way for that individual that they're talking to help them make a decision that's gonna be quite an expense, and they're engaging in enough of a way. So I think emotional intelligence, their ability to build relationships, their ability to sell consultatively and with great tonality and open-ended questions. I think they have to still manage their time well, manage their health well, and if they can do all those things, that's gonna reign supreme for a long time, I think.
That human presence component is not going anywhere,
For
at least
sure.
according to Ryan Groth.
Like like
Okay,
like
let's
like, here's I'll say one more thing, like, you can go and get a lot of prompts on ChatGPT on sales stuff that's better than I can create. But you won't get that on a coaching call from me when I'm bringing the energy to you and building relationship, right? When you're on a coaching call, I'm gonna do something different that ChatGPT can never do, but I cannot do what they do. I can't do what ChatGPT does. You can spit out a playbook better than I could. I'll bring it to life. I'll make it
Totally.
go on fire, right? That's the difference. That's
Yeah.
energy, right? And that's heart. So, yeah.
That's a safe bet. Okay, let's close with some quick fire stuff here. I have some fun questions here I've put together. Um, I say this all the time: leaders are readers. Our community's no different. What's one book that changed your approach to sales the most?
Baseline Selling by Dave Curlin. He's my sales mentor, for lack of a better word. He's a baseball fan. We met when I started my company 7.5 years ago. I didn't have a sales process to teach. I had built one as an employee of my other company. My old employer wanted me to license it from him, and I'm like, dude, I don't want to license that from you. I built it as an employee. I get it. Anyway, Dave Curlin has granted me basically the whole contracting space as the only one who can license baseline selling. So we're big believers. Most people think I wrote the book. I'm going to write my own version of it anyway, some point. But baseline selling is, I think, the most complete book on sales that is so good. It's so classic. It's timeless. Like, it's timeless. And it takes baseball and makes and integrates it into sales, which makes it fun. And everybody at least has played kickball. They know how to run the bases. So you don't have to be a big baseball geek to like the sales process. But it certainly makes it fun. It's not rigid and corporate and annoying and boring. It's super light, but it's simple and it's complete, which I
Hmm.
love. So that's my most impactful book that I've read, and I would encourage everybody to read.
What is one sales behavior that every sales rep should stop immediately?
This one would be never leave a meeting without a mutually agreed upon next step on the calendar.
So people
Most
are
people
pe-
most people leave a meeting with an undefined, not mutually agreed upon next step on the calendar, if they didn't close the deal or whatever it may be, and it's a lot of loose ends. So that needs to stop, and there's probably many other ones that we can touch on. That one right there is a big one.
That is sacrilegious, and it sounds like a screeching record in my ear right now. The fact that someone would leave a meeting without something on the calendar is insane to me.
Oh, it's so common. Yeah.
Sacrilegious.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay. No more of that. What's the most overlooked skill in a competitive sales environment?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to this. It's heavy on my, mind right now is because 'cause I've allowed it, even personally, to slip a little bit, and I've seen the effects. It's reviewing of goals. It's goal setting and reviewing progress against goals. I think some people set one and they kind of get lost in the weeds. They don't stay as focused on everybody's goals, the complete set of goals, not just like revenue only goals, the complete set of goals, because everybody who is in sales wants to achieve. You're there to achieve. Everybody's there to achieve. So creating more emphasis on achievement, little or big, is, I think, overlooked. I think some people forget to do it. They stop. They did it once and they never did it. They didn't do it for another year. Like, it's not a once a year kickoff. Let's set goals and look at what we want in this year. Like, it's not a once a year thing. It's an ongoing process that I think needs to be embraced more fanatically every day.
And then what's the best lesson that a client ever taught you?
Yeah, best lesson. I've had a few say do, and things where we didn't do what we said we were gonna do. And I think there's a few of those that have motivated some good change for the business. And I think that and I'm just gonna be real. I started this as like, I'm a sales guy starting a sales training company. Sales is like the most important thing that we think is the most important thing. And I think that we would run into these guys that were more operationally minded first. We're like, we don't want to oversell what we can't deliver on. I'm like, dude, you'll figure it out, right? So it's like, the reality is, it's both and. You have to be able to deliver on what you sell, but you have to still sell. And I think that what's happening in my life and then in the mature businesses, they start either really operationally and not sales minded, or they're sales minded and not operationally minded. And the other one has to catch up to the other if they want to break to the next level. I think for me, I've seen that play out in my own career with this business, specifically as the owner of STG, to see the impact of unfinished business rather than, does that make sense?
Mhm. Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that you come into this leadership role with your own bias, which as a salesperson has a sales focus, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. If I was given a bunch of poker chips and I was told to put go all in on one horse or the other, I'm picking the sales horse every single time because the long term the math backs that up, and yeah, it's messy along the way, but you know what? You do eventually figure it out. It's not to say there aren't bumps and bruises, but I would rather be I would rather be sales led and revenue driven than operations led, because I think that that's an easier problem to solve. And
Yeah, you just do what you
so
say you're gonna do, and you do a good job. It's like it's easy. It is easier, but what's getting the deals done, getting the leads, and driving human beings to be skilled to take that kind of action. That's hard. That's hard work too. So
super hard, and it's a rare skill set. Um, Ryan, this has been awesome, dude. It's been super nice to catch up with you, honestly, just as friends. Where can people find you? Where can they connect with Sales Transformation Group? Somebody's interested in the work you guys do. Make it easy for them to find you.
yeah, I'm on the big three platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. You can find me at Ryan Groth personally. I'm on Instagram probably the most with stories and personal stuff, which I'm a big fan. Like, connect with me on that. I love Instagram. More professionally on LinkedIn, more active, and Facebook's tough because it's got the friend max out thing. So, but you can hit me up there. And you could find those same 3 platforms, Sales Transformation Group. You can look us up there, or you can just search STG and you'll find us. And then our website, you can hit us up if you guys want to jump on a call. Well, we do get on our email list. We do webinars, we do challenges. We have a bunch of free content. We have a school community. We have a bunch of free resources. Our YouTube channel is pretty decent as well. We're working on that, and you guys can hit that up and see some of the content we put out there for you guys. And we have 2 podcasts as well: the Growth Minded Contractor podcast and the Sales Athlete podcast. So you can hit those up and check us out. Easy to find us. So,
Ryan, thank you so much, dude. Have fun, be well. Let's stay in touch and do something again soon.
of course, thank you so much. Appreciate you, man.